The Millionaire and the Homeless Black Man, a story inspired by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Ethan never expected his perfect world to shatter like glass. The city around him, gleaming skyscrapers towering over cracked sidewalks, whispered stories of a brutal divide. Glittering wealth rubbed elbows with desperate poverty every single day. Ethan, a tech mogul known for his sharp suits and billions, had built his empire on power and precision. But underneath all those boardroom victories, his personal life was slipping through his fingers. His marriage was collapsing, messy and loud. His wife had packed her bags, leaving a haunting silence in their luxury apartment. But the real shock landed when he found out about his son, Jack. The kid who once only talked about video games was now sneaking off every week to piano lessons with Maya. Maya, a name that felt like a contradiction to Ethan's world. She was a black woman, young and fierce, but barely holding on. Homeless, living. Ethan was unsettled, curious even. How could his son find safety in the hands of someone who barely had a roof? Maya was more than just a music teacher. She carried scars nobody dared to ask about. A wrecked childhood, hopes drowned in silence. But when she played, she wasn't broken, she was alive. At first, Ethan watched from a distance, his heart clenched tight. The city's gossip mills had already spun a story. The rich tech titan dabbling in an impossible friendship with a homeless black woman? Eyebrows raised, whispers thick with judgment. Some called her a fraud, others a menace. Behind the noise, Ethan felt something shifting inside him. An itch to rethink everything he thought he knew. But walls rose fast. Maya's past was a fortress. Childhood traumas she swallowed whole. Her eyes darted nervously whenever Ethan stepped too close. And the city, the relentless gaze of society's prejudices, made every small step between them feel like crossing a battlefield. Then, the earth beneath Ethan cracked wide open. The private investigator he'd hired uncovered stunning secrets. Maya's true identity wasn't what it seemed. And when that information leaked, everything blew up. Jack's bond with Maya was questioned, twisted into scandal. Ethan standing on the verge of collapse. Suddenly, their lives were tangled in a web of hidden truths no one saw coming. But just when Ethan thought he had a handle on it all, when he believed he'd found the meaning of wealth beyond money, an even darker twist slammed into his chest. A shared past with Maya, buried for decades. Memories neither wanted to face. Shadows that threatened to tear what little connection they'd managed to build. Ethan's role as a father, his pride, his fears, his blindness, trembling on the edge. Could he protect his son? Could he save Maya? Or was he doomed to lose everything to a past he never wanted to revisit? He stepped inside Maya's makeshift home one evening. The air smelled of cold, dust, and old dreams. In the corner stood the piano, silent but waiting. Its chipped keys gleamed faintly under a single dim bulb. The unfinished melody hung thick in the air, fragile as a whisper. Ethan's eyes locked on that dusty piano. His hand trembled, almost reaching out, but stopped, Could he play the notes meant to heal, or would the song just sink them all deeper into heartbreak? The question left a cold pit in his stomach, and out there, the city buzzed, rich and poor colliding, secrets spinning, and a story far from over. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important warning. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without notice. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content that's coming. And since you're here, drop a powerful like that really helps me with the algorithm. Oh, and let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Ethan's hand hovered over the piano keys, trembling, caught in the tension of unfinished notes. Doo! He could hear the distant sounds of the city, horns blaring, voices raised in anger or laughter. But here, inside Maya's world, it was a different kind of stillness. Then, without warning, a loud crash shattered the quiet. The alley outside erupted like it had sprung a leak. Ethan startled, his heart racing, pulse pounding in his ears. He turned sharply toward the entrance, instinct kicking in. Maya jumped, eyes wide with fear. "Steady back!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the tension. A sudden urgency shot through Ethan as he stepped closer to her, instinctively shielding her with his body. Just outside, a small cluster of people had gathered, their faces twisted in shock. From the rushing bodies, a man stumbled back, his shirt torn and stained. He was shouting, voice hoarse with panic. "Someone's been hit! Call 911. What happened?" Ethan demanded, feeling the surge of adrenaline flood his chest. The man pointed wildly down the alley. "Gunshots! I heard gunshots!" Ethan felt a chill settle over him. Images flashed in his mind. Jack's face, the laughter they shared. A primal instinct to protect surged within him, not just for his son, but for Maya too. The street felt like a war zone, the air thick with danger. And then he saw her, a figure lying motionless on the ground, draped in shadow. Panic closed around Ethan like a fist. He edged toward the open entrance, heart hammering. "Maya, we need to go!" Before she could respond, another loud crack echoed, sending the crowd into a frenzy. Shouts mixed with the rising hum of sirens. Everything twisted into chaos. People shoved each other, desperate to escape. But Ethan's gaze remained locked on the figure. In the chaos, something tugged at his consciousness. No, it couldn't be. But when the streetlight flickered overhead, illuminating the figure, the world splintered. Ethan's breath caught. It was a woman. Long black hair, a familiar tattered coat. No, it couldn't be. "Maya!" he gasped, the name barely escaping his lips. The woman on the ground. It was Maya's sister, Claire. The truth twisted the knife deeper. Ethan staggered back, heart pounding against his ribs. The sister he never knew about, the one living in the shadows of Maya's past. "Maya, come on!" he called. But Maya stood frozen, disbelief spreading across her features. The blood on the pavement was a stark contrast to the harsh reality dawning on them both. This wasn't just an attack on the streets. It was intimately linked to Maya's past. Secrets were unearthing themselves. Vibrant and chaotic, clawing to be acknowledged. Suddenly, Maya's expression shifted. Her eyes, once bright with guarded hope, now glimmered with fear and pain. "Ethan, this isn't what you think," she trembled. "What do you mean?" he pressed, desperate to comprehend the storm of emotions brewing between them. But before she could answer, sirens blared closer, lightning bright in the dark. Shadows loomed, the chaos swirling. Ethan's heart sank, realizing nothing would ever be the same again. He stood at the edge of a precipice, staring into an uncertain void. The past was crashing down, leaving him breathless and uncertain. What else was buried beneath their stories? What truths would tear them apart even further? That pit in his stomach widened. Outside, the world continued its relentless roar as Ethan and Maya faced a truth meant to shatter the very foundation of their lives. And just when he thought he grasped the reality, a scream pierced through the chaos. "No!" It echoed off the buildings, leaving them standing on the brink, hearts pounding with unanswered questions. Ethan's heart raced, the weight of the moment heavy in the musty air. He stood frozen near the piano, a silent witness to something raw and fragile. Just as he finally summoned the courage to step forward, it was a jarring chaos, a rumble building into a roar that swallowed the night. Dust fell from the cracks in the ceiling, swirling like a ghost in the dim light. Maya whipped around, alarm flashing across her face. The piano rattled, its once soothing presence now a source of dread. Ethan fought to keep his footing, but the tremor turned into a full-blown quake. Panic surged within him. What was happening? Then, a figure burst through the entrance to the alley. A tall man with wild eyes and a frantic energy. A memory jolted through Ethan's mind like lightning. This was Derek, the very brother he hadn't seen in over a decade, the one who vanished from their lives after a disastrous argument over money and choices. This stranger now carried a desperation that spoke volumes. "Ethan, you need to get him out of here!" Derek shouted, voice hoarse and raspy. "Bah, what are you talking about?" Ethan yelled back, but Derek shoved him aside, eyes darting around wildly. "Maya, get Jack, now!" The urgency in Derek's voice sliced through the thick air. Ethan's mind raced, 100 questions colliding with the chaos. Jack! Where was his son, and why was Derek here now, of all times? His brother's sudden appearance ripped open old wounds, memories of family fractured and scattered. "Jack!" Maya's voice pierced through the panic. She dashed deeper into the cramped alley, fear propelling her forward. Ethan stumbled after her, the world blurring around him. As they reached the makeshift space Jack had been using for lessons, Maya froze. A glimpse of dread gripped her face, transforming her surroundings into a nightmare. The piano, fragile and unsteady, stood at the center, but Jack was missing. Then the building began to groan. A rumble, deeper this time, filled the air with the scent of concrete and fear. Ethan's heart pounded wildly as scenes of destruction flared in his mind. He turned back to Derek. "What is going on?" "Just trust me," Derek snapped, his eyes wide, frantic. It's about to get real. A tremor cracked through the ground again. The alley shifted. Closer. The walls seemed to close in, trapping them. A loud crack echoed, and dust exploded from the ceiling. Everything changed in an instant. Maya's phone buzzed, illuminating the text that appeared on her screen like a bombshell. Is this the truth? I can't wait to tell everyone about your kid. Maya's face drained of color. The secret she held so tightly was unraveling, but Ethan didn't have time to ponder. "Jack!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. "Where are you?" The distant sound of glass shattering cut through the chaos. Something caught Ethan's eye. Movement by the entrance. A group of figures emerged, shadows spilling into the dim light. Murmurs erupted, voices climbing into a crescendo of shock and judgment. He barely registered their faces, familiar, yet twisted with anger and disbelief. A voice rose above the din, slicing through the chaos. "Look who it is! The millionaire with a secret!" And his little sidekick. Derek stepped in front of Ethan, protective. But they all felt it, an invisible wall crumbling under the weight of scrutiny. Ethan's heart sank. How much did they know? Their eyes bore into him. Accusations and whispers mixing with the fear surrounding them. What had he stepped into? The truth, buried deep, was clawing its way to the surface. Suddenly, a scream sliced through the thick air. It was Jack. No! The ground quaked once more, and Ethan's heart lurched. The night had turned treacherous. All his questions collided, leaving only one truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. Ethan's heart raced, the weight of the moment heavy in the musty air. He stood frozen near the piano, a silent witness to something raw and fragile. Just as he finally summoned the courage to step forward, a thunderous tremor shook the ground beneath him. It was a jarring chaos, a rumble building into a roar that swallowed the night. Dust fell from the cracks in the ceiling, swirling like a ghost in the dim light. Maya whipped around, alarm flashing across her face. The piano rattled, its once soothing presence now a source of dread. Ethan fought to keep his footing, but the tremor turned into a full-blown quake. Panic surged within him. What was happening? Then a figure burst through the entrance to the alley. A tall man with wild eyes and a frantic energy. A memory jolted through Ethan's mind like lightning. This was Derek, the brother he hadn't seen in over a decade, the one who vanished. This stranger now carried a desperation that spoke volumes. "Ethan, you need to get him out of here," Derek shouted, voice hoarse and raspy. "What are you talking about?" Ethan yelled back, but Derek shoved him aside, eyes darting around wildly. "Maya, get Jack, now!" The urgency in Derek's voice sliced through the thick air. Ethan's mind raced, 100 questions colliding with the chaos. Jack? Where was his son? And why was Derek here now? Of all times. His brother's sudden appearance ripped open old wounds. Memories of family fractured and scattered. "Jack!" Maya's voice pierced through the panic. She dashed deeper into the cramped alley, fear propelling her forward. Ethan stumbled after her, the world blurring around him. As they reached the makeshift space Jack had been using for lessons, Maya froze. A glimpse of dread gripped her face, transforming her surroundings into a nightmare. The piano, fragile and unsteady, stood at the center, but Jack was missing. Then, the building began to groan. A rumble, deeper this time, filled the air with the scent of concrete and fear. Ethan's heart pounded wildly as scenes of destruction flared in his mind. He turned back to Derek. "What is going on?" "Just trust me," Derek snapped, his eyes wide, frantic. "It's about to get real." A tremor cracked through the ground again. The alley shifted, closer. The walls seemed to close in, trapping them. A loud crack echoed, and dust exploded from the ceiling. Everything changed in an instant. Maya's phone buzzed, illuminating the text that appeared on her screen like a bombshell. "Is this the truth? I can't wait to tell everyone about your kid." Maya's face drained of color. The secret she held so tightly was unraveling. But Ethan didn't have time to ponder. "Jack!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. "Where are you?" The distant sound of glass shattering cut through the chaos. Something caught Ethan's eye, movement by the entrance. A group of figures emerged, shadows spilling into the dim light. Murmurs erupted, voices climbing into a crescendo of shock and judgment. He barely registered their faces, familiar, yet twisted with anger and disbelief. A voice rose above the din, slicing through the chaos. "Look who it is, the millionaire with a secret and his little sidekick." Derek stepped in front of Ethan, protective, but they all felt it, an invisible wall crumbling under the weight of scrutiny. Ethan's heart sank. How much did they know? Their eyes bore into him, accusations and whispers mixing with the fear surrounding them. What had he stepped into? The truth, buried deep, was clawing its way to the surface. Suddenly, a scream sliced through the thick air. It was Jack. No! The ground quaked once more, and Ethan's heart lurched. The night had turned treacherous. All his questions collided, leaving only one truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. And then, in a violent flash, a figure burst into the alley, a blur amid the chaos. Dressed in black, a bandana covering their face. The world seemed to slow as Ethan recognized the silhouette. It was Claire, the sister he'd never known existed. The one who had been pulled into Maya's past like a dark shadow. "Get back!" Claire shouted, her eyes wide with urgency. In her hands, she held a gun, its metallic glint catching the light. Ethan's breath caught. "What are you doing?" "Stop everything! It's too late!" Claire yelled, her voice trembling but fierce. The crowd froze, shock rippling through the onlookers. This was not what anyone expected. Secrets exposed, lives intertwined in ways they couldn't understand. "Claire, what are you talking about?" Maya's voice broke, desperation creeping in. "This isn't how you fix things!" But Claire stepped forward, wild-eyed and frantic. "I did what I had to. You don't understand. Jack was never just a kid. He's..." A soul-crushing silence descended as Claire's words hung in the air, revealing an unbearable truth. Everything Ethan thought he knew about his son, about Maya, about their lives, was about to come crashing down. The weight of that truth crashed over Ethan like a tidal wave, leaving him breathless. The city outside continued its relentless roar, unaware of the bombshell about to explode in their faces. What had he stepped into? What would it mean for them all? Ethan stood there in Maya's cramped space, the dusty air wrapping around him like a heavy blanket. He was caught, torn between worlds. His hand still hovered near that piano. Thoughts swirled, clashing like storm clouds in his mind. But suddenly, the moment shattered like glass. A loud crash echoed from outside, jolting him back. His heart raced. Ethan rushed to the makeshift door, flinging it open. What he saw made his stomach drop. A small crowd had formed, faces twisted in shock. Someone shouted, "There's been an accident!" Ethan squeezed through the throngs, breathless. An overturned car lay at the curb, smoke billowing out like a dark omen. In the middle of it all, a man lay crumpled on the street, a disheveled heap. His heart pounded harder. "What happened?" he called out. A voice yelled back, "The driver was speeding! He hit that man!" Panic rippled through the crowd like a wave. Ethan's eyes widened as recognition set in. The man on the ground was someone he had known, a former business partner, Scott, someone who had crashed out of his life years ago. Ethan's chest tightened. Memories of ambition and betrayal flooded back. He stepped closer, hypnotized and horrified. Paramedics arrived, sirens wailing in the distance. They pushed by, voices shouting commands. "Clear the space! We need room!" But the crowd pressed closer, drawn like moths to a flame. And then came a new voice, clear and demanding. "Move aside!" It was Maya, emerging from the shadows. Ethan was stunned. She darted through the throng, fearless. Determination etched on her face. She knelt beside Scott, hands assessing, like someone who had done this before. "What are you doing?" Ethan snapped, disbelief punctuating his words. "I know first aid," she replied, her voice steady but urgent. "I can help him." As she worked, Ethan felt raw fear crawl up his spine. He watched her. This was a new Maya, a warrior. She fought against the odds, and yet flashes of her past haunted him. How did she know so much? He caught whispered conversations around him, gossip about her skills, murmurs of her past, judgments in the air, lingering like smoke. But then the ground shook again. A loud crack split the air, followed by a distant rumble. It was an earthquake. The crowd gasped, panic igniting. The crowd began to scatter. People screamed. Glass shattered from nearby storefronts. The world tilted. In seconds, chaos erupted. Panic-stricken faces darted around, searching for safety. Ethan grabbed Maya's arm, pulling her toward him. "We need to get out of here!" But her eyes locked onto Scott, still lying there, in desperate need. "He won't survive without help," she screamed, desperation cracking her voice. It echoed through the din of fear. In that instant, a decision hung in the balance. Ethan felt the rush of conflicting emotions. Save his son, save Maya, or save a man who had once betrayed him. Anxiety twisted in his stomach. How could he choose? Then, in an act of balance, Maya's voice broke through the chaos. "Ethan, you don't understand. Scott knows something that'll change everything." Those words echoed in his head like a drumbeat. What did she mean? Before he could ask, the ground shook again, this time more violently. People fell, others cried out. And in that tumult, Scott stirred, eyes fluttering open. "Ethan," he whispered, blood trickling down the side of his face. And at that moment, every scar, every fragment of loyalty, every fear they carried rushed to the surface. The air thickened with unsaid truths. Invisible threads spun tight around them. The walls surrounding Ethan's world crumbled like old bricks. Ethan's heart raced. What had just shifted? What future was rising from this chaos? He stumbled back, suddenly questioning everything. The stakes had just escalated. Ethan stood frozen, his hand hovering just above the dusty piano. The air felt thick, like it held its breath. Outside, the city pulsed with life. But inside this cramped shelter, time seemed to collapse. What was he doing here, on the edge of something he couldn't quite grasp? Maya's eyes flickered, wary, yet curious. He could see the shadows in her gaze, the weight of her past pressing down like an anchor. He wanted to reach out, to understand, but a nagging fear kept him rooted. He opened his mouth, but the words tangled, choked by the heaviness hovering just beyond them. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the stillness. The door burst open, and a burly man stormed in, his face contorted with rage. "Where is she?" he yelled, his voice guttural and raw. It echoed off the walls, sending an electric shock through the air. Maya stiffened, instinctively taking a step back. "Eric," she breathed, a tremor running through her voice. Ethan's heart raced. Who was this man? An intruder? A menace? He couldn't let fear dictate his acciones. "What do you want?" Ethan stepped forward, trying to shield Maya behind him. The man laughed, a cruel sound that made the hairs on Ethan's neck stand on end. "Protective daddy, huh? Doesn't matter, I'm here for her." Eric's eyes darted to Maya, a twisted mix of anger and desperation. "You think you can just run away? You have no idea what you're messing with." All at once, the truth exploded like a firework. Maya was tangled in something much bigger than Ethan could comprehend. He felt sick, his stomach turning at the implications. What had she hidden from him? From Jack? Eric lunged toward Maya, but Ethan reacted on instinct, shoving him back. "Stay away from her." His voice was fierce, filled with a protective rage he didn't know he had. Maya stepped forward, shaking slightly. "Eric, please, I'm not coming back to that life." Eric's face twisted in disbelief. "You think you can just abandon us? You belong with us, with your family." Ethan's heart lurched. Family? What kind of family was this? But then, everything changed in an instant. Maya's entire demeanor shifted, a mask slipping away to reveal raw anguish. "You don't understand," she cried, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't choose this life. I had a brother. He died because of you." Ethan's world collapsed. Maya had lost more than her home. She had lost her family. The man in front of him was not just a stranger. He was tied to her past in tormenting ways. The truth was dark, and the air felt suffocating. It hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. Maya was not just a music teacher. She was a broken soul, tied to shadows that threatened to drag them all into the abyss. Eric glared at Maya. "You think you can outrun us? will find you always. With that, he stormed out, leaving a thick silence behind. Ethan turned to Maya, desperate for answers, for comfort, but the look in her eyes was riddled with pain. The connection they had forged seemed flimsy, on the verge of shattering under the weight of their histories. "What do we do now?" he finally managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. But all she could do was shake her head, lost in a storm of emotions. The city rumbled outside, indifferent to their turmoil, as if holding its breath for the next act of a tragedy unfolding. Ethan felt the pit in his stomach deepen. They were caught in a vast network of secret histories and intertwined lives, and the worst was yet to come. The question loomed like a dark cloud. How deep did Maya's past really go? And was it too late to save her? And Jack? Ethan's hand hovered over the dusty piano, caught in a fragile moment. The air crackled with something unsaid, something electrifying. It was more than just the scent of old dreams and forgotten notes. It was the tension in the silence, a waiting pulse that thrummed between him and Maya. The world outside faded. All he could hear was the echo of his own heartbeat. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the quiet. The makeshift door flew open as a figure stumbled inside, panting. It was a man, wild-haired and frantic, his clothes torn and muddy. Ethan's heart raced, the alarm bells ringing in his mind. Who was this? "Maya!" the man shouted, his voice slicing through the air like a knife. "You've got to get out of here, now!" Panic painted his face, eyes wide with fear. Ethan felt dread rise in his chest, heavier than before. This was no random intruder. The urgency was too raw, too real. Maya stiffened, her entire body tensing as the man reached for her, desperation etched in his features. "What are you talking about, James?" Maya whispered, backing away. "What's happened?" His voice dropped to a frantic hiss. "The cops! They're looking for you. They know everything." "It's bad, Maya. Point. You've got to come with me, now!" Ethan's mind spun, its thoughts clawing at each other. Maya turned towards him, eyes wide, fear mixed with something else. Guilt, maybe? He stepped closer, but the man, James, held out a hand to block him. "I told you to stay away, rich boy. This isn't your fight." "Enough!" Ethan snapped. "What the hell is going on? Why are the cops after Maya?" James took a deep breath, his gaze darting between Maya and Ethan, breathless with urgency. "She's not who you think she is. Not at all. They're coming for her because of her past." "Maya, tell me!" Ethan demanded, feeling the walls around them closing in. Maya's expression twisted, a storm of emotions raging in her eyes. "There's something I didn't tell you, Ethan." But before she could continue, sirens blared outside. Red and blue lights cut through the shadows of the alley, illuminating everything in a harsh glare. Ethan's heart raced. "Maya!" James shouted, pulling her towards the back exit. "We have to go, now!" In that heartbeat, the reality of it all crashed down on Ethan. This wasn't just an artist trying to teach his son music. It was so much darker. He felt his lungs tighten, a lump rising in his throat. He had fought for this connection, for his son's happiness. Now it felt like he stood on a precipice, teetering over a chasm of betrayal. "Maya, wait, please!" he called, desperation clawing at his voice. She hesitated, looking back over her shoulder, her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, I didn't want this life. I thought I could leave it behind." But the sirens grew louder, and panic surged. "Maya, we don't have time," James urged, yanking her away. Just like that, the light of hope flickered. In a flash, they dashed out the back, leaving Ethan alone with his fevered thoughts. Stunned, he stood there, hands shaking, the weight of everything crashing in. He had fought for truth, for understanding. Now he had a shattering reality. Everything had changed in an instant. A scream broke through the cacophony outside. It echoed like thunder in his mind. The city continued to hum and vibrate. But in that small, dim space, the world felt like it had exploded. Ethan's heart sank. He didn't know if he could hold on to this new truth. What had he really unleashed? The chaos outside had only begun. And now the story, their story, was unraveled in ways he never could have imagined. Was Maya the one in need of saving, or was he lost in illusions he built around her? He stepped back, a chill settling in. How far were the lies intertwined? And now, only questions remained. Ethan stood there, his heart racing, trying to grasp what had just happened. The air was thick with panic. Maya was gone. James had dragged her away into the uncertainty outside, leaving him standing in the dim light of this makeshift home, overwhelmed by a rush of emotion. What just happened? His pulse throbbed in his ears. He felt cold, lost in a world that suddenly felt too big, too chaotic. The sirens outside wailed, slicing through the haze of confusion. And Ethan wanted to follow them, to reach out for Maya, to pull her back. But could he? What was this danger that loomed over her? Then there was a loud bang, like thunder. The street outside erupted. A commotion pierced through the noise of the sirens, shouting voices, the clash of metal, screams trailing into the darkness. Panic hit him again, and he moved instinctively toward the door. Ethan pushed through the crowd, heart hammering in his chest. "What's happening?" he shouted. But no one heard him. The chaos swallowed his words. There were people everywhere, faces twisted with fear and curiosity, drawn by the storm brewing outside. He spotted them then. James, dragging Maya towards a van that jumped into the fray. Urgency in every ounce of their movement. But as soon as he saw them, everything changed. The van's side door slid open, and another figure stepped out. A woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. She wore a badge. A police badge. "Stop right there!" she shouted. Ethan's heart dropped. This was becoming a nightmare. "Maya!" he screamed, lunging toward her, but James held her tight. "Maya, don't go with them!" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. But the officer held a glinting handcuff, her voice commanding, "You're under arrest, Maya! We have a warrant!" Time froze. Warrant for what? A wave of confusion crashed over Ethan. The truth came tumbling down like a house of cards. Maya turned, a mixture of betrayal and terror etched across her face. "Ethan, please, just—" The officer cut her off. "You're wanted for questioning about a series of incidents connected to your family. We know what you've been hiding." All the air left Ethan's lungs. Hiding? Maya's past had come bursting into the present, and all he could do was stand dumbfounded as the shocking revelation hung in the air. James stepped in front, his face a mask of panic. "No, she didn't do anything!" The officer's eyes narrowed. "We're not here to debate that. We have evidence." "Evidence?" Ethan's mind swirled, trying to grasp what she was saying. Questions ricocheted in his head. What did they know? What had Maya done? But as Maya was pulled toward the van, something in Ethan snapped. He could no longer stand by. He lunged forward, catching Maya's arm. What? What is this? What are they talking about? But just then, a voice broke through the bedlam. A familiar one. Ethan! He turned, stunned, as Jack burst from the crowd. But his son's expression was one of terror. Dad, you have to help her. They're wrong. Everything fell silent for a moment. The crowd stopped, watching, waiting. The weight of judgment grew in the air around them, heavy and suffocating. Ethan felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. Jack's wide eyes reflected both fear and something deeper. Was it trust? Just then, the officer turned and looked straight at Jack. You need to step aside, son. This doesn't involve you. No. It does. Jack shouted, stepping forward defiantly. You don't know her. She's not a criminal. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted again. Something was unfolding that neither Ethan nor anyone else understood. The flames were fanned. The truth that lay tangled was waiting to ignite. Then a shocking realization washed over Ethan. Wait, what if she isn't who she says she is? He blurted out, memories of their conversations flying through his mind. The officer paused, a flash of recognition darting across her face. You don't know? Ethan's heart plummeted. What did he not know? What had he missed? And as the murmurs began to swirl around them, filling the air with speculation and judgment, everything spiraled. Suddenly, in a blur, the officer pointed to someone in the crowd. You! And Ethan turned, eyes wide, as another person emerged from behind the throng, stepping into the flickering glow of the streetlights. It was a woman, eyes steady, a knowing smirk on her lips. Hello, Ethan, she said, her tone dripping with familiarity. I believe you're looking for the truth. In that moment, the ground beneath Ethan's feet felt like it had crumbled. This was not just Maya's past coming back. It felt like his own was unraveling before him too. Who was she? What did she know? The crowd held its breath. The world around them blurred, and Ethan realized this was only the beginning of a deeper, darker truth. His heart raced, pounding in his chest, with a foreboding sense of what was to come. What had he stepped into? Ethan felt his breath hitch as the woman stepped forward, her eyes piercing through the chaos and locking onto him with a knowing gleam. You don't know who she really is, do you? Her voice was smooth, yet laden with a weight that echoed against the growing noise of sirens and panicked voices. Ethan swallowed hard, confusion colliding with uncertainty. What do you mean? He couldn't help but demand, the urgency in his voice rising above the fray. The crowd around them seemed to draw closer, some whispering, their eyes shifting between Maya and this new arrival, an electric current of intrigue building in the air. Let me introduce myself, the woman said, lips curling into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm Claire, Maya's sister, but I'm also more than that. I'm the key to your son's future. Ethan staggered back as the revelation sank in. Maya's sister? He thought he'd heard everything, but his world tilted on its axis again. What are you talking about? Before Claire could respond, chaos erupted. A loud shout echoed from the back of the crowd. Get down! A figure, clad in black, barreled through the throngs, a sharp glint catching Ethan's eye. Without thinking, he threw himself toward Maya, instinct throttling his movements. Then, in an instant, a shot rang out. The explosion echoed loud, clarity splintering as it ricocheted through the alley. Time freezing like a photograph snapped at the wrong moment. Maya fell to the ground, her scream a heart-wrenching culmination of disbelief and fear. No! Ethan's voice tore through the silence that followed, raw desperation clawing at his throat. He dropped beside her, heart pounding as he cradled her head. The crowd gasped, some recoiling, others rooting in shock. "Somebody call an ambulance!" someone yelled, voices merging into a wave of chaos. But all Ethan could see was the horror in Maya's eyes as she clutched her side, crimson blooming across her shirt. "Ethan." Her voice was a whisper, frail and trembling. "Stay with me." He pressed a hand over her wound, shaking, feeling the warmth seep through his fingers. "You're going to be okay. Just hold on." But as time resumed its relentless march, Claire leaned closer, her expression a mask of guilt and regret. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "What do you mean?" Ethan shot back, shock turning to anger. "What have you done?" Claire's expression shifted. "I'm not your enemy. None of this was meant to happen. The people after Maya, they want more than just her. They want Jack." Ethan's breath caught again, dread creeping in with icy fingers. "Jack?" Claire nodded, her gaze haunted. "He isn't just a kid, Ethan. He's tied to everything. A legacy, a secret, bound across families." The intensity in her eyes shifted something deep within him. This was bigger than he ever imagined. The cracks of their lives were starting to fracture, revealing a web he never knew existed, woven through pain, loss, and betrayal. Behind them, the sirens wailed, and the world blurred into a smattering of lights and shouts as people grew frantic. But all Ethan could hear now was Maya's breath, shallow and faltering beneath his palm. He felt the pull of gravity in the space between them, a tether swelling with unspoken truths. "Maya, I swear I'll protect you," he pleaded, but her gaze shifted, flickering with a sense of defeat. Then Claire stepped back, letting the chaos swallow her next words. "This changes everything. You'll have to decide who you trust, Ethan. Choose carefully." And with those words, clarity twisted into confusion. As Maya's eyes began to flutter, the world around him appeared to unravel. Each revelation unwinding another thread of certainty. What awaited them beyond this moment? What were they entangled in that could drive them all apart? Ethan felt the earth shift beneath his feet. The truth was buried deep, and all he could do was ride the wave of uncertainty. The night was just beginning, and its shadow was looming darker than ever before. What if everything he thought was real was built on a lie? And for the first time, Ethan couldn't see the way forward. Ethan felt the warmth of Maya's blood seeping through his fingers as he held her on the ground. Every second stretched unbearably heavy. Chaos surrounded them, sirens blaring, people shouting, but all he could focus on was her fading voice. "I didn't want it to end like this. Stay with me, Maya, please." His voice was thick and desperate, shaking with fear. He pressed harder, trying to stem the flow, but the panic was like an unrelenting wave. Jack's small figure squeezed through the throng, eyes wide with terror. "Dad, what's happening? Is she going to be okay?" Ethan looked up, searching the crowd. "Help is coming, buddy. Just—" The officer moved to grab Maya, but Claire stepped in between them. "You don't understand. She's not what you think. We need to help her." The officer hesitated. "What do you mean?" Claire's voice was urgent, her eyes darting around. "Her past isn't a crime. Someone wants to hurt her, and we have to stop it before it's too late." Ethan's heart raced. Was this true? Everything seemed to be spiraling deeper into confusion. "What do you know?" he demanded. "Let me help. I know how to keep her safe," Claire pleaded, her hand trembling at her side. Maya's gasp echoed in his ears. "Don't let them take me, Ethan. I can't go back. I can't!" The sirens grew louder, approaching fast. Ethan could hear the determination in Jack's voice as he shouted, "She's not a criminal!" Then everything shifted. A group of officers surged forward, hands raised, ready to take control. "Step aside! We need to assess the situation." They moved like a tide, and Ethan felt panic rise again. "Maya!" he yelled, but their eyes met, and in that moment, understanding passed between them. A shared hope that they could find a way through, together. Just then, a paramedic elbowed through the crowd, eyes on Maya. "We need space, now!" He knelt beside her, quickly assessing the wound, eyes cold and efficient. "Hold on, we're gonna get you help." Maya's breath came in shudders, but she smiled weakly at Ethan. "Promise me you'll find the truth." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "I promise, Maya. Just hold on." As the paramedics lifted her onto a stretcher, all chaos broke loose around them. Voices peppered the air with accusations and fear. But in that moment, all Ethan felt was the daunting weight of the unknown. Once they loaded her into the ambulance and drove off, Ethan stood there, numb. Jack tugged at his sleeve, eyes sparkling with concern. What if they don't find her? Ethan knelt down to meet his son's gaze, determination hardening inside him. "They will, Jack, but we have to do something now. We have to uncover the truth." Behind them, Claire approached hesitantly. "You might not trust me, but I have the answers. I know how deep this goes." Ethan hesitated, but saw the sincerity in her eyes. He felt the swell of urgency rise again. "Then tell me, we don't have time to waste." As they walked together, Ethan glanced up. The city loomed large over them, a mass of stories hidden behind gleaming facades, secrets twisting through its tangled roots. Jack looked up at Ethan. Determination casting a fierce light in his eyes. "We'll find her, right, Dad?" Ethan took a deep breath, resolve filling him. "We will, kiddo. We'll bring her home." And as they moved into the heart of the city, Ethan spoke softly to himself. A promise carried in the air. Nothing would tear them apart again. They would face the shadows together and hold on to hope, no matter how fragile it felt. With one last glance towards the night sky, Ethan felt the weight of a new dawn approaching. The light ahead shimmered, uncertain yet inspiring. A path yet to be trodden. Now, before the conclusion fades from your mind, you must subscribe immediately to ensure you don't miss what's coming next. Smash that like button now to awaken the algorithm and bring more stories to life. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even a second longer. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this explosive finale. You're part of this journey, and your support matters. Let's keep it going.